as it has been firmly and pointedly established here on Smugface, when it comes to video games, my favourite genre is fighting games. Ever since playing Street Fighter 2 way back in 92-93, it has been over 30 years of playing fighting games in various forms. One of the games I grew up loving was the subject of today's video, Marvel Superheroes. I absolutely love fighting games and I love comic book heroes, so bringing them together in a big mashup is just heaven for me. The 90s were a game-changing decade with the emergence of Street Fighter 2, creating and establishing the one-on-one fighting game genre, and inspiring some of its biggest rivals, including King of Fighters and Mortal Kombat, to name a few. But one of the biggest creations of the genre was porting over popular comic characters into the world of street fighting. Enter X-Men Children of the Atom, which brought over Marvel's popular mutant group and put them in their own fighting game. And seeing the mutants in one-on-one action was quite the revelation. The game even gave a glimpse into the future when Street Fighter character Akuma made an appearance as a secret character, and watching him go against the X-Men was only the beginning, as Capcom would go on to create the very popular X-Men vs Street Fighter, which in turn would go on to establish the future Marvel vs Capcom series. But I'm getting way ahead of myself here. The follow-up to X-Men Children of the Atom was Marvel Superheroes, and getting to play as Spider-Man, Iron Man, Hulk, and Captain America and others was it was an awesome feeling. And no, I wasn't really into the comic books for a number of these characters outside of Spider-Man and Wolverine with the X-Men. It was the animated shows that made me aware of a number of these characters, but playing these characters in the game got me interested, and of course, years later, the MCU movies got me into Captain America a whole lot more. Marvel Superheroes had a great fighting game engine. It took what X-Men Children of the Atom established with the super jumps and the multi-fast hit combos and cool super moves. The use of the Infinity Gems was a nice added touch and gave it a unique feel, and it wasn't just simply a X-Men Children of the Atom clone with other Marvel characters. The Marvel Superheroes roster has a total of 12 characters. Well, 13 actually if you include Anita from the Japanese version. And whilst it is a nice sized roster, especially for the time, it was released in 1995, the Marvel Universe is way bigger, and the subject of today's video is creating a dream roster for a follow-up to this game. I have been heavily inspired by YouTuber Torgy's Arcade, who has created an excellent series called Build the Roster, building hypothetical fighting rosters for hypothetical sequels. So I have taken that concept and I will apply it to Marvel Superheroes, and I will create a follow-up called Marvel Superheroes 2 Return of the Heroes. I'm still working on the title part. Now, there has to be some guidelines to establish something of a coherent and somewhat realistic roster, but it is a dream game with a dream roster, so I can go a little bit crazy. So the categories that I've put the game into are the roster size, the gameplay style, the gaming modes, and of course the actual roster. Now, I had in mind to create a roster of 60 to 80 characters, but then I thought that is way too much. So I trimmed the number down just a little bit and I decided to stick with 44. Nah, you know what? Let's go for the juggler. Let's make it 50 characters. 50 characters, of which 35 will be available from launch, and I will use the Injustice 2 model of a one-time purchase to access all remaining 15 DLC characters, which would come in 3 waves of 5. In the original Marvel Superheroes, on top of the main roster, you had 2 bosses in Doctor Doom and Thanos. Here I have decided on 4 bosses, of which 3 actually would be DLC, but I will get into that once I go through the roster. So the roster size will be 50. The gameplay style will be the classic 3-on-3, which started way back in Marvel vs Capcom 2. And it makes sense. This is the style that became canon in the Marvel vs Capcom series, and for a roster of 50, it gives more options when picking a team of 3, going back to the 2-on-2 style, which Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite did, I felt was a huge step backwards. So I'm going to scrap that idea and I will just go with the 3-on-3 option. And I would also speed up the game and give it that fast-paced, frantic start that we had seen from Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Obviously, there would have to be the triple threat hyper combo when the gauge hits maximum, but I would adjust that a little slightly. Here's how I would do it. What I would do is, after selecting the main 3 fighters, I would then have the option for what I would call a finisher mode. What is a finisher mode? Well, it's choosing your preferred style of executing the character's super finish. You will have A, traditional, which is basically building the gauge by regularly getting in those hits and attacks until the gauge builds right up until its maximum point, which will then be a level 4, and you can execute those finishes as or when. Or you can go for B, triple threat. What that would entail is building up the super meter for each individual character, not for the whole team. Now, if all 3 characters' super meters are built and it's on a level 3 or 4, you can then pull off an exclusive ultimate hyper combo, which if connected correctly will take 75% of an enemy's energy. But like I said, this will be exclusive only to the triple threat mode, so it would give players incentive to get those hits in with each of their characters and build the levels to level 3 or 4 maximum and pull off that great ultimate combo, which can also be counted for as an achievement on PlayStation or Xbox. Next up will be the gaming modes. Arcade mode. You will have the basic arcade mode, which is to select a team of 3 fighters and then fight 6 other teams, which will get harder and harder as you progress until you meet the final major boss. And as I said, for this game there will be 4 bosses, but only 3 will be available for arcade mode. So you will have the option to choose from one of the 3 bosses. There will also be individual end stories for each character, so the incentive to complete all 50 character stories is there. But unlike the 2-page comic strip that we saw in the ending of Marvel vs. Capcom 3, that will be gone and replaced with an end scene similar to what we saw with Injustice 2 in the multiverse mode, when you complete with individual fighters. Only this will have more of an anime cartoon style feel to it. Versus mode. Your basic player versus player match with the ability to select the CPU as your main opponent if you can't get a hold of another human player, and you can set it on whatever difficulty you like, basically just like you'll find in the Street Fighter games. Very straightforward. Story mode. Now, something similar to the Injustice games, where you take control of various characters and watch as the different scenes unfold and create a movie with all the cutscenes. Now, we did see something like this in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, but it was critically panned by fans and gaming journalists alike. So, a vast stark improvement on that storyline. I would once again look into how the first Injustice game story mode panned out and take inspiration from there. And as for the story itself, well, in the Marvel universe there is a multitude of stories to choose from, but as this is a fighting game, what I would do is comprise a story that meshes elements of 3 famed story comic arcs. And those comic story arcs are Avengers vs. X-Men, the Civil War comic arc, and the Onslaught saga. I don't want to go into too much detail on how this would fold out, but the story summary could be that the heroes turn on each other, and the cause of it is the entity known as Onslaught. I mean, a story mode that meshes these 3 storylines can make for a fun and prolonged story mode campaign, as well as a compelling movie that unfolds as you progress throughout the game. Minigames mode. So basically having little quizzes about the Marvel Universe with mini card games or what have you, and this would be an option for something lighter to complement the heavy fighting and story action found in the other modes. It will help you unlock various power-ups that can be added to a character's moveset, similar to the Heralds and Heralds function from Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Online mode. Obviously to play other gamers across the globe online and test your skills against the very best. These are the main options I would have for this game. Simple and steady, but with the ability for longevity to keep players coming back for more. I would also be inclined to add the new universe mode that we see in Street Fighter 6. And now we move on to my favourite part, selecting the actual roster. Now everybody will have their list of favorite Marvel characters to put on the game, so I'm going to try to really put out a roster that most fans would be happy with. But we all know that not everyone's going to be happy, so what can you do? But in any event, these are the 50 characters I will be choosing, and what I'm going to do is divide them into 4 groups. Group A will be the regulars, characters who have appeared in at least 3 or more games, ranging back from X-Men Children of the Atom to Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Group B will be the deuces, characters who have made 2 appearances in the whole series. Group C will be the returners, characters who have made singular appearances within the series. Group D will be the newcomers, very self-explanatory, characters who are yet to make their appearances in the fighting game genre under the banner of Marvel and Capcom. And no, the assist characters from Clash of the Superheroes I will not be counting. I had considered adding a 4th character in the 3-on-3 as an assist function, but no, I'll just make it simple and just keep it as the 3-on-3. So in any event, let's get on with the groups, shall we? So, Group A, the regulars. Spider-Man, Captain America, Iron Man, the Hulk, Thor, Wolverine, Cyclops, Storm, Gambit, Venom, Magneto, Dormammu, Doctor Doom, Psylocke, Thanos, and Juggernaut. All these characters have been regulars throughout the Marvel vs. Capcom series, and most of them are fan favorites, so these are my picks for the regulars. Next up, Group B, the Deuces Club, and those characters are Deadpool, Rocket Raccoon, Sabretooth, and War Machine. Doctor Strange, Hawkeye, Nova, Rogue. Now technically she has appeared 3 times, with her showing in X-Men vs Street Fighter and Marvel vs Capcom 2, and her appearance as an assist character in Clash of the Superheroes. Like I said, assist characters past don't count. Group C, the Returners. Characters who have only made a singular appearance, and now I'm bringing them back for their next outing. So the Returners are Black Panther, Black Widow, Cable, Captain Marvel, Dark Phoenix, Gamora, Ultron, and there you have it. The Returners who have all made singular appearances will be back for this game. And of course all of them will have tweaked up and different movesets. And finally, Group D, the newcomers. I had a list of about 88 characters, and having to narrow it down was no easy feat. There were a ton of characters I had to cut for roster size, so I narrowed it down to all these guys and girls. So, the newcomers: Ant-Man, Blade, Black Cat, Carnage, the Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, Daredevil, Drax, Loki, Moon Knight, Mystique, Nimrod, Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, Star-Lord, and the Fantastic Four, the Human Torch, Ben Grimm, the Thing, Sue Storm, the Invisible Girl, and Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards. And that is my full list of characters for the playable roster. And if I do say so myself, that's not a bad selection. A great mix of famous veterans, returning fan favourites, and never before seen exciting new additions. Now I did state that there would be 4 bosses, and now I wish I hadn't. But sticking to my original idea, there will be boss characters, 1 returning, and 3 new boss characters. Starting with the returning boss, and he will be Onslaught, and he will be the main protagonist in the story mode that I stated earlier, in a storyline that comprises elements of X-Men vs Avengers, Civil War, and the Onslaught saga. The story would be fixed that Onslaught, through Xavier, is quietly manipulating events that sees his X-Men turn on other heroes across the Marvel Universe. All events would lead up to facing the main villain of the story, Onslaught. Much like his form in Marvel vs. Capcom, there would be two versions of him, with the first being having to fight him and then deal with some of the mutants or heroes that he has mind-slaved. Then the second version would be a big massive screen presence. Much like his appearance in Clash of the Superheroes, but I'm trying to imagine a mashup of Galactus and what Onslaught did in Clash of the Superheroes. And that is what I kind of have in mind for him as a villain in this game, but obviously make him very challenging to beat. And much like Galactus's unblockable hand stomp, Onslaught would have something very similar when he goes "Behold my mighty hand." Obviously you'll have a few seconds to see what's happening. This is one move that you'll have to duck or it's lights out. The other three bosses would be available in the arcade mode, and you either get the chance to select one of them or you go with random mode and you get who the CPU randomly selects. My choices for the next bosses are Annihilus, a character that I confess I really don't know too much about other than what I've seen in the Marvel encyclopedias. But he is a fearsome insect-like being who wields the powerful cosmic control rod. He's a regular villain in the world of the Fantastic Four, so there could be some character interactions based on that. Next up is Magus, a powerful alternate version of Adam Warlock, who was the main antagonist in the Infinity War saga within the comics, and is a regular nemesis of the Guardians of the Galaxy. A villain I have heard of, but again I don't know a great deal about. But with him being near omnipotent during the Infinity War saga, he can be shaped up to be a very powerful and formidable boss. And finally, for my last villain, well, it was a toss-up between this guy or Kang the Conqueror. And given Jonathan Majors' portrayal of Kang in the now much maligned Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, the only good thing to come out of that movie was Kang and Jonathan Majors' portrayal of him. It was a hard call, but it won't be Kang. So I decided to go with this guy, the Beyonder. A being who comes from a race of cosmically powered beings. The Beyonder is virtually omnipotent and can change reality to anything he wants simply by thinking, making him virtually a god. A boss like this in the game would prove to be very powerful, dangerous, very hard, and frustrating to play. He could be configured in a way that he can use any of the main character's style of attacks, as well as create a move similar to Galactus's planet-shattering thud. With his powers, the possibilities for his moveset are hard to imagine, but they would be very effective. And with the way he is in the comic books, a translation of him into the video game could make him arguably the most difficult boss ever seen in the Marvel vs. Capcom fighting game. And there you have it, that is my dream game, my ideal sequel for Marvel Super Heroes 2, with a big and expansive roster. With so many YouTubers creating their fantasy rosters, I just had to get in on the act. And what an amazing concept a game like this would be. Sadly though, this video is probably as far as it goes for this being spoken into existence. But with Marvel's rich history of superheroes and Capcom's long and storied catalogue of producing fighting games a la Street Fighter, producing a game like this in the way I've laid it out, wouldn't it just be amazing? If only. Come on Capcom, Marvel, Disney, sort it out. We need a Marvel Super Heroes 2 sequel. We also need a sequel to X-Men vs Street Fighter 2. We also need a proper Marvel vs Capcom 3 follow-up, and Infinite does not count. If anyone's out there listening, please, let's get it done. This game would rule. I would buy it tomorrow if it was to be released then. Until they create an invention to project my thoughts into reality, this is as good as it's going to get. I'm an avid lover of fighting games, and crafting a roster of my favourite Marvel heroes, this would indeed be my dream game. My dream roster, Marvel Super Heroes 2. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you liked it, and if you want to see more, please remember to like, share and subscribe. Thank you.